Hey, hey, F50 Women. Thank you so much for joining us. I am here with Shea, and she is a former salon owner, many decades making people, women, maybe men too. I'm not sure, Shea, you could let us know, but helping people to feel beautiful. I know that oftentimes when I go into the salon, I am incredibly thankful because it may seem little to some, but as women, we walk around feeling ugly or whatever it is. I don't even want to go into that because we want to hear your story, but I appreciate the work you have done. But since then, which we'll hear, she has pivoted. She's doing some other stuff. I'm not going to give that story away. I'm just thankful that you joined us, Shay. And thank you again for being here.
Oh, well, thank you, Julia, for having me. I'm really excited. And, I got to say something about getting your hair done. I feel like it's the healing power of a haircut, right? You might walk in
Really?
having a bad day and you walk out with a bounce in your step and you're just feeling lighter and better.
Yes, yes, it's more than vanity,
Mhm.
a healing.
Yes.
I might even say it's spiritual, but anyway, you're the one that's doing it. So I'll let you share all about that as we chat. So let's just get started. As a younger woman, it could be as a girl or as a young adult. Tell us about who you were and what you wanted to do then, what you wanted to be, what were your dreams at that point in time?
So I'll take you back to Sunday school, probably between the ages of 8 and 10.
Hmm.
And I was in the basement of the church, and I remember staring at this blank, like bulletin board, and it was like full of cork board. There was nothing on it, but all of a sudden I had what I now know as a vision. At the time, I had no clue what was
Mm.
happening to me, but it was as if all of a sudden I saw a movie out of nowhere. And it was a vision of me standing on stage speaking to a group of people with a microphone in my hand. And I was like, wow, I don't know what that is.
Wow.
And so it was kind of like I had it and then forgot about it. But I was outgoing. I sang in the church choir. I sang in the church school choir, plays, things like that. I danced for 13 years. All of those things to get me on stage and not thinking about that consciously, but I think subconsciously, unconsciously, there were feelings that were arising that were driving the actions to get me on some sort of stage. I say all that because that's kind of where I wanted to, or what I saw. But I remember one time, oh, it was probably around 15 or 16, my mom and I are watching Tony Robbins or watching Oprah, and Tony Robbins was on there. And I
Right.
thought, oh, wow, maybe that's what that meant. Kind of like what he does. He's a kind of a motivational speaker. Maybe that's what that meant. And
Yeah.
then at some point around that same time frame, and I don't even remember sharing the conversation with my mom about having the vision, but I'm sure I did. We talked about
Mm.
angels and spirituality and energy and all of those things all a lot growing up. At one point, there was another woman on Oprah who was coaching people in fearless living, and her name's Rhonda Britton. And my mom said
Mhm.
to me, you know what? I think you could do that. And it
Wow.
wasn't until many years later I actually met her, Rhonda Britton, at a conference. Didn't remember this story until I went through her coaching program and was actually interviewing her for my podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're the same lady that my mom pointed out to me when I was a kid. Like, wow, talk
Wow.
about full
Full
circle.
circle
Yeah.
moment. Yes. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. If I can just ask a question because I'm
Of
curious.
course.
Sounds like you were raised in the church and your mom talked about angels and miracles and visions. And I know sometimes when we're in church, those seem like in some
Mm.
places they I'm just curious about your mother's background and her openness to that and where that came from and did you ever struggle with that? I know that's sort of a sidebar, but I'm always curious about people's spirituality. I think it's so important. We believe in a God and why not believe in visions and miracles and angels and all of those things. So tell a little bit about that, about how that transferred to you.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
around that same time frame in Sunday school, around 8 to 10 years
Mhm.
old, I'm actually in the basement of the church attending Sunday school,
Mhm.
and I'm sitting in the back row as one troublemaker kind of does. And so I was sitting in
Mhm.
the back row of Sunday school, and we were learning the Easter story. And
Mhm.
as you know, the Easter story talks about how Jesus was probably around Palm Sunday, how he walked through the city on a donkey and all the palm
Mhm.
tree leaves and all those things.
Mhm.
At some point, I can't even explain it other than an audible voice and a feeling of a presence sat next to me in one of the folding metal chairs in the back row of the Sunday school, leaned into
Wow.
my right ear and said, "Did you hear that? The
Hmm.
religious people killed Jesus.
Hmm.
Don't be religious or consider yourself religious. Instead, love everyone like Jesus did."
Wow.
And I got chills talking about it again. But I'm so, so thankful and honored that I feel like God instilled that in me because it gave me my framework of my faith to the point where I started, even at that age, saying to adults that I'm not religious. I do believe in Christianity, and I would say if I had to identify with one, that was definitely it. But I am
Yeah.
more on the spiritual side of
Right.
Christianity because there's everything. Now, as I've gotten older, it wasn't until I don't even know at what age I was. My mom and I would talk about spiritual things like angels and
Hmm.
miracles and things like that, visions, psychic abilities, if you will, but not like psychic abilities like the 1-900 numbers from back in the day, not that
Right.
kind of thing, more of being able to have premonitions or have feelings
Right.
or to like have a
Yeah.
knowing that something was going to happen or someone was going to call, right?
Yeah.
Those types of spiritual gifts. And we also we figured out that we were empaths because I could, after many years as an adult, I moved away, 4 hours away, I was able to feel something that she was going through and not even know that
Wow.
she was going through. Our feet were hurting at the same time, same foot, kind of a thing.
Mm.
And I honestly wish I had asked where all of that came from with her,
Right.
because I know my grandma, my mom's mom, didn't necessarily have that kind of connection in
Mhm.
conversation. She may have
Yeah.
had that connection, but she never talked about it.
Yeah.
And I love how my mom and I, like, that's the best part about our relationship is that we were open to having those kind of conversations. And we both
Yeah.
collected angels and read Angels on Earth books and magazines for many years because we
Okay.
just saw and over again how people have had real, actual experiences with angels on Earth. So,
Yeah.
that to me also instills the hope that I think we sometimes lose
Yes.
that we lose throughout our life. So, yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
asking that question.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's so important that we embrace the not understandable things. We believe in a God who makes miracles, but that belief, it's almost like you have to open up
Mm.
and move past the sentences in the Bible, and move wider and beyond that, which we can't know in our minds. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
I was part of a church plant, and then the associate pastor, we kind of broke off from that and started a church out of their home and really
Yeah.
focused on community and focused on the Bible, as in diving into a chapter one line at a time. And so we
Mm.
took a year and a half to go through the book of Acts. And it was by far, line by line, and it was by far the most growing spiritually I could do because
Mm.
everything that I had thought about of people in back in Jesus days
Mhm.
was laid out for me as truth. So when people would
Mm.
say, "Oh, you can't heal someone," like I think there's a thing called Reiki that I now do,
Yeah.
but at the time, it was kind of a woo-woo
Hey.
concept. Like everybody was like, "Oh, that's crazy. Why would you do that? That's a new age, right?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like here's the principles of it. Like we're
Wow.
instilled with the breath of fire of the Holy Spirit, just like the
Yeah.
disciples were. And Jesus said to them, "Go out and spread the good news." And
Do as I have done.
right. So we have that capability inside us. We
Yeah.
have to be open, like you said, to really God to work through us.
which
Yeah.
takes a setting aside of that human ego that thinks I'm doing something. And you just have to let it work through you.
Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
I believe God has to work in us so
Yeah.
that he can work through us. And so
Yeah.
that was part of my journey. I think the working in me is an ongoing process, but man, I went through a lot. Yeah.
Now, this might be an unfair question because God chooses who God chooses. But have you ever looked back and thought, why me?
Yes,
Mhm.
and it wasn't necessarily why me. It was
Mhm.
more that there's absolutely no way you have given me something like this.
Okay.
So it was a pushback, if you will, a denial. And it was a
Okay.
conversation, right? I believe in the power of prayer and have a constant conversation with him all the time. And so having that conversation with God about, yeah, that's really cute that you gave me these abilities, but no, I mean, no, I don't. No, I don't know. And so
Mm.
it was, and I couldn't even tell you when I had that, but and I think most of us have that conversation over and over, right? Like
Yeah.
we'll believe in ourselves for a moment, we'll believe in our capabilities, their gifts that God's given us, and then something happens and we doubt them. And that's when we lean into, okay, God, really, I know that's not what you are called me here to do. And then
Yes.
something will show up again, and it's like, oh, but you are.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Especially when that one sort of call comes and you're like, okay, great. Yeah, I'm going for it. Then you, well, no, 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 no. Somebody else has to do that. Yes. And have you, when did that moment happen for you? You said that did happen at some point. Was it Was it a big moment or just like you said, a continual moment? I'm asking that question because, at least for me, it was sort of a growth over the years. And then
Mm,
it came to a point where almost like I was squeezed and pressed in my life so much that I was like, that crushing moment where, they say if you don't crush, the oil can't flow kind of thing. And
mm,
that's when I sort of surrendered and I was able to somewhat more allow God
mhm.
to work in me. Did you have that moment, that sort of life pressed in, and you were like, all right, God, all right, let's just do this now?
You said the keyword surrender.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's so important for your audience to really lean into. There's been multiple times I've had to remember to surrender. I feel like that crushing that you were talking about, God, I can't count how many times that's appeared in my life. But it's
Okay.
when you surrender and go, okay, God, I'm the vessel. What is it that what do I need to do? What work do you want to do in me? And to be honest, I was in an abusive relationship from my mid 20s to mid 30s. And
Mm,
I had felt as if like I was there for a reason. I was in that relationship for a reason. And it was a constant prayer of, I pray for him, heal him, take care of him, all of those things. And all of a sudden, one day, I don't even know where I heard it or how I heard it, but it was like, why don't you pray for you?
mm,
Right. So then I started to shift from heal him, take care of him, to heal me, take care
yeah.
of me. And then at some time later, he was in a car accident. Unfortunately, I was able to get away. And before this, I was breaking up with him over the phone. It was, here comes that audible voice and that presence again, leaning into my right ear saying, not now, not now. About 3 years later, he was in a car accident and his family was questioning me on his life and decisions that he was making and things they thought he was doing, like work related and all kinds of things. And I'm like, yeah, none of that is true. What are you
Mm,
talking about? And then they turned it around where they were saying to me, oh, you're enabling him. You're taking care of him. He was an alcoholic. Oh, it's your fault, And I was like, whoo,
mm,
wow, okay. And as I was literally leaving the hospital that first night, driving home, I remember all of a sudden it was like an old, I'll age myself here, a V8 moment, right? A knock
right.
on the head of, oh, got it. Now I know what not now means. Not now meant I have to get to this point so I can hand him back to his family.
Mm,
And that's what
wow.
I did. I just started to put the pieces together. They didn't know. what was really going on in the home. And so I was able to share with them what that was and say, here's the thing, I've been trying to break up with him for years, and now I'm breaking it up with you through him, for him. He was in a
Okay.
coma, came out with brain damage. They moved him from
Wow.
long-term care facility to a nursing home.
Okay.
And he spent the last 15 years of his life in a nursing home in a wheelchair. So
Yeah.
very sad. And yet
Yes.
I prayed that he would come out of it and never remember his former life. Because
Right.
before me, he had many negative relationships, but it all started from childhood, right? And
Yeah.
so we just repeat our childhood in adult relationships. So I say
Okay.
all that to say that I've been surrendering many, many, many times
Over and
throughout
over
my
again.
throughout my life. And I think that's just a reminder that when we, and this is my process, and some it might maybe some of your audience goes going through the same thing. When you're in that moment of the world is coming in, crushing in on you, and all you want to do is try to control all the things, all the moving parts, and you're like, I can't, there's no way I can. That
Right.
is the moment when it's a reminder to go, "Ah, got it, surrender." Instead of control, surrender. And then lean into the peace and the uncomfortableness, because it's uncomfortable to surrender, right?
Mhm.
But it also gives you peace to just know, then relax into that God has this and that everything is happening for you, not to you.
That's great.
I see that
Yeah.
resonated with you, Julia.
Yes.
You've got a story in there.
Rewind and listen to that again. Surrender is you have to get comfortable with the discomfort of the surrender. Yeah, just rewind that and listen to that again.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for sharing all of that. I consider this a blessing and a gift that you got to share all of that. You know, when you have those silent discussions with your Father in heaven and you want to have these kind of discussions with people, this wasn't planned between us. So I'm just so thankful that you shared all of that powerful stuff. And I pray that my audience will go back and listen to it again and know that they're not alone. And no matter how old you are, you can find that miraculous place where you can hear the voice of God and surrender and understand that life is not happening to you. So important. Let's skip over and let everybody know what you do now, who you are now. Let's learn a little bit about Shea now.
Yeah, so there was another surrender moment. I had lost, unfortunately, had lost my brother and both my parents in a short period of time. And my oldest brother is the only family member living left. And so it was, okay, let's move closer to me. And it was across the country. And I was like, oh, God, is this literally what you want me to do? And the signs, the doors that kept opening was there. And I said, if that's the case, if that's what you want me to do, then I needed to figure out what to do with my clients, how to close it, how to make all the transition work. And all the pieces fell into place. There's something about when you surrender, the trust is then the next step, that the doors will open and that things that seem impossible will be taken care of. We'll be able to say, yes, I can do that, or yes, you can do that. And so that's what seemed to happen. And so I was able to, I had been coaching and podcasting and had written a book probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And so when I decided to do this transition 3 years ago, it was like, okay, I can stop doing hair and focus fully on that. And my brother gave me a safe place to land and be so that I could focus on that. Because as you know, being an entrepreneur is always up and down. And so I'm thankful that I had that. So what I do now is I am a coach. I'm a certified fearless living coach and trainer and professional speaker. I have written a book called How to Get Your Voice Back, as
Mhm.
well as I have a community that I have built called the Maker's Machine, where small business owners and podcasters come together and they really help each other, support each other, uplift each other, but they also hold each other accountable and have they're a board of advisory for each other, where a lot of networking groups that you may attend don't have that. They just have the here's what I do, move on kind of a thing
Right.
to the next person. And I really wanted to create a community where we were literally helping each other. So it's an inner circle of small business owners and podcasters. So that's what I am now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And tell us how that whole idea came of building a community.
Mm.
Did that have anything to do with your first business, your salon? Did it have anything to do with all this miraculous stuff you're talking about? The message that to care about people. Tell us how this whole idea gelled together.
Mm. Yes. I love that you said about, where you kind of thinking about caring about people. I never
Mm,
thought about it like that, but yes, that's literally what it is. So, as a hairstylist, when I went to cosmetology school, I was 19. And
mhm,
I came home one day and I was so elated about all the people's hair I got to do, but not just the people's hair, it was the conversations that I got to have, and the clientele that goes to hair a cosmetology school to get their hair done is a lot of times the elderly and the people who don't have a whole lot of money because it's very inexpensive to get their hair done there. And to just I felt the impact on what I had on them. I'm 19 and my wisdom tells me I am here to make a
right,
positive impact in other people's lives. Got it. Okay. And so it was kind of like that's my drive a day
right.
in and day out of why I, jump out of bed and like, yes, I can't wait to start today. And who do I get to meet and make an impact on it? And that's what served me so well in the 28 years of my career. At some point, I don't even remember when it happened. It was after I started on my healing journey after my ex's car accident. This is when it happened. I started on my healing journey and I learned so much about myself. There was a God working in me. Started counseling, a Christian counselor right away, reading books, listening to podcasts, journaling, really peeling away the layers of the onion that I am, that we all are,
Yeah.
and healing. And as I started to do that, I would share what was going on with to my clients, which is the
Okay.
first time I had ever been vulnerable. And at the time, I couldn't even pronounce the word because it was so uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
And then I started to share what had changed not only in me, but what had started to change in the dynamic of my relationships with my family. Because, like we
Mhm.
said, our childhood relationships in our family shape our adult decisions on who we're relationships with, right? And so I started to shift my conversation with my dad and it was instead of blame and shame, it was more just an open conversation. Like, say, Dad, so I hear what you just said. Are you asking me to do this particular task for you, or are you trying to manipulate me into doing it? And he was like,
Wow.
what? Like what? I don't even know what that word means. And so it was like, wow. So I had the same thing when about being vulnerable. So it's literally that, Dad, about being vulnerable. Are you asking me to do something, or are you trying to trick me into doing it? And then if I don't, you're going to be upset and
Mm.
pull away your love. And he was like, well, I never thought about it like that. And I said, well, that's what you've done my whole life, and I'm not blaming you, what has shown up for me. And then that's one of the things that was very familiar to me in the relationship I was in. And he was like, huh. And it was such an easy conversation to have, even though it was
Mm.
scary when I started it. But as soon as I ripped that band-aid off quickly, the flow, because he was so receptive, thank goodness, he was
Yeah.
receptive to having that conversation. And then our relationship changed. He became my best friend in the last 5 years of his life. So as I'm now sharing all of this with my hair clients, they would then go away 4 to 6 weeks, come back for their next appointment, and they'd say, oh my gosh, I applied to what you said with my spouse or my boss, my parents, my kids, whatever, my team. Have you considered being a coach or writing a book, starting a
Yeah.
podcast speaker? And I was like, and this is the funny thought. I thought, well, I mean, yeah, kind of, but I remember that thing when I was a little kid in Sunday school. That was my vision, but I don't really think I can do that. And over time, it
But
was
you
like,
were.
right,
But you
uh,
were doing it. Yeah.
right. I was doing it, didn't realize it. And I just
Yeah.
felt like God said, what if they're right?
Mm.
So the thing I love about what I do is really noticing when people have imposter syndrome and they
Yeah.
go, oh, I can't do that, or blah, 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 blah. And instead of going, well, what if they're wrong? focusing on, well, what if they're right?
Yes.
And most of the time, we don't see ourselves as other people see us. We are our own worst critic, right? And so when we take what other people say to us as truth and follow that path, then it's like, wow, it's even a more opportunity to heal, the door of opportunity to grow. I call it the exploring it with curiosity. You go on this journey of curious exploration, and you're like, oh, well, if that's true, what else is true?
Right. Yeah. And then you find your lane, your purpose, where you best fit.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
question in the conversation with your dad, where did you find the courage to have that, to just do that?
Mm.
We grow up with our parents, they are who they are, and either we just back away from them or we keep the pattern and then go back irritated. Where did you find the courage to do that?
Well, my Christian counselor gave me some really great advice.
Hmm.
And he said, you have to teach people how to love you.
Yeah.
And I saw, okay, well, shouldn't my dad know? He's a parent. He's, at such
Yeah.
age, whatever. Like he's been at this longer than ever. And he said, what if he never had the tools
Yeah.
to love? And I was like, wait, what? Like that never crossed my mind. And so then I thought, okay, so I'm just gonna start so I think I even said, so you just want me to reach out and hug him? Like that's not gonna go over well. And he's like,
Right.
yeah, that's what you do. You just
Mm.
reach out and hug him. And then it's like, well, what if it's awkward? And he's like, so what? Let it be awkward. And
Yeah.
I was like, huh, okay. And again, at the time, I could barely say the word vulnerable. So I was like, well, that's a definite trigger for my being afraid to be vulnerable.
Right.
And yet, it was just thinking about how if I don't do this and be vulnerable, he's not going to learn how to treat me. And then this has all been, what has this all been for?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe he doesn't change, and that's okay. But I need to learn how to teach people how to treat me for other people as well, not just my dad.
Yeah.
And it was almost like my dad was my first guinea pig on how to do that. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how once the his wall, once my wall came down, it gave him permission to let his wall down. And he was like,
Yeah.
oh. And then it got to the point where, he would just show up at the salon unannounced and just it was like, come here and give me a hug. And it was like,
That's beautiful.
wow, where did
What?
that come from?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important for everybody, really. But I feel there's a big void now of really understanding you have to teach people how to love you and how to treat you. People don't understand that intrinsically because of
Right.
their backgrounds and their histories and their fears and their discomforts. And so, what you just shared is so important. You have to teach people how to love you. And sometimes that means you showing them first.
Yeah.
How, so after you left the salon, you learned a lot from sort of coaching. It was just something you were doing in your salon. Now you're doing it as your profession, and you look back on all of those years. What advice would you have for anyone in whatever position they're in when they're looking back? Say you're a 50-year-old woman like me or like others, and you're looking back on your life, you still haven't found, you didn't hear the voice, maybe you're locked off from it, you don't have the vision, you don't have your purpose. Looking back on your life, what would you suggest or advise women to look back and look for? You mentioned hearing what other people are telling you. Oh, you should do that. But as you're scanning back on your life, seeing your career, your family, your however you move, when they're looking back, is there anything you would advise them to look for in terms of who they were and where they've been? Or say they don't
Yeah.
have those people telling them, hey, you should do that. But they purposely want to find, why am I here? What would you
Mm.
advise them to look back for or over or whatever?
Well, I just turned 50 this past year, and so I do this exercise actually quite a bit. So,
Hmm.
especially with my clients, because I will have them keep a journal. But one
Okay.
of the things that I highly recommend is one, everyone journal. And you start with the question of what are the obstacles that I've overcome? And I've noticed that coaching other coaches, business owners, entrepreneurs, the obstacle, in fact, I think there's a book called The Obstacle is a Way.
Hmm.
Noticing and being aware of what you've overcome is making you the expert on that subject. So that then the next person who's coming up behind you, you can then give them a hand up, not a
Right.
handout.
Right.
And that to me, I believe wholeheartedly is the purpose of life, is to really notice what we've overcome. And instead of saying, hey, I can do the work for you, saying, hey, this is what I've learned. When I went through my own mess, this is what I learned about it. Maybe this will work for you. Maybe it won't, but just know that you're not alone in this. Yeah.
Nice. All right. One more question, though, if I may. Why journaling?
Mm. So in It's so funny how things that we do in childhood then come back to haunt us or help us, right? And so in junior high, in middle school, seventh grade, our English teacher, and I grew up in a very small town, so I had my English teacher from seventh grade all the way to senior year. And he always had us journal every day. It was so stupid in my head. I'm like, this is so dumb. I hate this. And he gave us a topic every day, and it was different every day. And we had to turn it in, and I hated it. I didn't journal for a long time. And then I had some health issues going through my ex-boyfriend in the thick of surrender. Like, what am I going to do? Here I am stuck in this mess. What am I going to do? And I started acupuncture, and I claim it's the acupuncture that helped clear some space with me,
Mm.
clear some stress. And I
Right.
felt God's presence again and say, why don't you start journaling again? And so I had this literally overwhelming desire to pick up a
Mm.
pen and paper again. And I remember my first journal that time. I just wrote down, like, this is stupid. I don't even know why I'm writing. I don't know what I'm going to write. This is dumb. Why am I even journaling? I hated journaling. It hurts my hand and blah, like all the excuses. And just writing down my thoughts is the purpose of journaling, is
Okay.
holding your thoughts captive. And in that first particular journal, I'll never forget, next thing you know, I'm writing about a moment when I was in sixth grade before I started journaling and unpacking that as I'm writing it. And then that's when I realized, holy cow, when I was in that age, I would have anxiety attacks. And then I came home, and instead of talking about it, we ate. So it was like I
Mm.
just shoveled the food in. And that's how I dealt with the stress of having the anxiety attacks. But I didn't even recognize them as anxiety attacks because nobody ever talked about that at that stage of life in that in the world. But nobody ever, it was kind of a, don't, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
And we definitely didn't actually talk about her a day. My mom was an amazing cook, so of course there was always fresh baked goodie of some sort. And it was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll have 5 of those. And
Mm.
I stuffed my feelings down rather than sharing them. And I went,
Okay.
wow. In that first session of journaling, I was like, look what I learned about me then. Like,
Yeah.
I got several more years to go.
Yeah.
And just by doing that, I wholeheartedly swear by our inner voice helps us or hurts us. And it
Mm.
can either guide us and propel us to growth, or it can hold us back and keep us fixated on where we're at or where we've
Yeah.
been. And it's not until you really get those, what that inner voice is saying to you, that you're going to define a path. You can choose for you to grow, or you can just stay stuck in the autopilot that we normally are in. Journaling helps you physically see what it is you're actually thinking, what those inner thoughts
Mhm.
are saying to you. And then it goes, oh, this is what I'm saying to myself Would I say this to my best friend? Would I say this to my worst
Yes.
enemy? I mean, these things are horrible. Why would
Yeah.
never say that to another person? And yet we believe them so much as true, which then has an opportunity to go, yeah, all that's a lie.
Yeah.
None of that is true.
Yeah.
So that's why journaling is so extremely important.
But thank you for sharing because just that I'm at your old position where I have to sit down with a journal and write stuff and take all this time and what's going to come out anyway? Everything I already know. But things may come out that you're not even aware of. So maybe I'm gonna, Shay, no promises, but I think I'll try because yeah,
Yeah,
at this point, at this age, everyone, if you're 50 and over, we don't know how much time we've got. Let's just clear all the baggage out and all the
right,
mess and all the lies that we're telling ourselves and
right,
some of the things we say, I know, like you said, we would never say to somebody else, why are you of less value? The person you
right,
walk around and live with every day.
right. May
That's
I throw
amazing
a
stuff.
shameless plug in there?
Please, please do. Yes. Yeah, you're
Well,
giving us so many nuggets. Yes.
yeah, so my first book was actually that. It's called How to Get Your Voice Back. And it is a
Okay.
prompt journal so that you can, it's the 6 steps that God took me through to
Hmm.
lift me up when negativity took me down. And it's to
Okay.
really help you notice what your thoughts are and then how to kind of rewire your brain to move forward.
Nice.
And so, yeah, you can go on my website and order an autographed copy.
Nice. Okay. And all those links will be in the description. So you'll be able to
Yeah.
get that journal. I advise you to get it. I mean, the depth of our subconscious could probably journal for many years to get it all
Yeah.
out. So yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So if you met your younger self now, so you are you now, but you're walking down the street and you meet your younger self, what is the one thing you would tell her?
Well, first of all, I would hug her. I
Okay.
would hug her and tell her that all the lies, those inner voice is all lies, and that
Yeah.
you are loved beyond measure than anyone you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. And then a question I like to throw at all of my guests is, why do you think evil spreads faster than love, or do you not even believe that's true?
Why do I think evil spreads faster than love?
Or do you not even think that's the case?
I actually don't think it's true that it doesn't spread
Okay.
faster. I believe it spreads as fast as love.
Okay.
However, I believe there are powers that be, quote unquote, that don't want you to ever acknowledge that there is good, love, light in the world.
Okay.
And so they try to quiet that and promote the evil, negativity, and fear. And we
Very
see
good.
that every time you turn on the news, every time you turn on social media, some days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's faster. I think we just don't see it.
Okay. And knowing that social media, the news, the world seems to want to bombard you with all of that negativity, just this could be as a coach or just as a person, how do you think we can circumvent or avoid, or what's the antidote to that?
Mm,
Because, I really like to try to avoid all news and all
same.
of that stuff. But
Yeah.
then I'm thinking I'm so uninformed, the fires in California.
Mm.
It's good to know that these things are happening. So how do you think we can circumvent that, knowing that we have to be participants in the world?
This is a hard one because I have it too. In fact, just started watching the news recently with my new boyfriend,
Okay.
and who's amazing and fantastic. And that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But
Yes.
they're news watchers. And one of the things that they do that I found really helpful for me is that they have a channel that they stream. It's called Haystack News. So it has news from everything that they've chosen, every channel that they've chosen. And it'll just
Okay.
be a minute to 3 minute blurb. And then it moves on
Okay.
rather than watching the same news channel all the time. So I think that's
Okay.
super helpful. But two, I have to remind myself that I have zero control in any of it.
Right.
The September 11th taught me that. My heart broke so bad. I was glued to the TV for weeks. And many years later, I was talking to one of my clients who is the dean of psychology at a local university. And she was saying how
Mm.
people who did that September 11th, we were we were all experiencing a PTSD. Like it didn't happen to us, but we were watching it. So it was as
Mhm.
if it happened to us.
Yeah.
And so reminding myself that I am such an empath that I have to go, this is not happening to me.
Yeah.
And I can pray for whoever I can pray for, well, who is experiencing the negativity, the fear, all the things, the fires, which break my heart, the war
Yeah.
in Ukraine right now, in Syria,
Yeah.
and all the things. And be able to say at the end of the day, I have zero control over any of it. And there is typically always a bigger agenda
Yeah.
and money tied to anything that you see.
Yeah.
So if you think about that from the standpoint of, do I need to have this affect me? Or can I just take it in as knowledge? And I don't even have to have a conversation about it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be informed, but at the end of the day, do you? Because you don't ever have
Right.
to talk about it again.
And what can you do? I do. Yeah.
And I will even back myself out of conversations about that when they ask me about it, like, well, what'd you think of this? Or what'd you think of the debate? Or, whatever. And I'm like, I don't watch it. It's out of my hands. So
Yeah.
that's not an important thing for me. And I get a
Yeah.
lot of people going, oh, that's a terrible way to look at it. And I'm like, well, look how worked up you are right now.
Right. And then we get anxious and upset and affecting our own bodies and minds and relationships. Most of those things we can't even touch or feel or affect. It's just our opinions. We're just chasing each other around rooms. It,
I've seen as a hairstylist, I saw so many clients per day physically ill
mm,
of the thing they were watching on the news, and it was the thing they were focused on, and not just focused, like hyper focused
yeah.
on the one thing. And it was like, oh, you don't get how much it's manifesting and killing you. It's
Yeah.
manifesting an illness
Yeah.
inside your body. And so it's definitely
Yeah.
an exercise of releasing it.
Right. Yeah. And realizing you're outside of it and it's not part of you. And don't miss your life worrying about things that you cannot control. You have no
Yeah.
power over it. If I can somehow if somebody gives me a grant or something and I can go to California and help feed people, or if I can house, then I can do something. Otherwise, I'm just
Right.
sitting in my living room with my family around me, missing them, curled up in a ball of, crying about something I just can't do anything about right now.
Right.
So that is really, really, really good advice. I think a
Well,
lot of people now need to hear.
and I will say, you mentioned curled up a ball crying about. I
Mhm.
feel like God hears our tears.
Okay.
So as unspoken prayers.
Right.
So even though you're
Nice.
crying and you're feeling like you're not doing anything, that crying is the doing, is the releasing of the control of it for you. But it's also
Yeah.
talking to God, going, and my heart breaks for them. Help me through this. Help them through this.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. God
Tears are
hears.
unspoken prayers.
There you go.
Yeah,
Tears are unspoken prayers. That's wonderful to remember. And when they flow, don't hold them back. Sometimes that is your prayer. Yeah.
absolutely.
Wonderful. So now, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. I mean, I think I could talk to you all afternoon. You've got a lot of wisdom and a lot of grace and just been blessed so much. I'm thankful to be able to have shared what God shares with you. But now I want to give you time to let our audience know how they can find you, what your new project is, or workshop, or let them know what you're doing so they can get in touch with you after this podcast. Your website, email, or Instagram, or whatever you want to share will be in the comments so everybody will be able to click on them and get to you. Share what you'd like about what you're doing next.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, Julia. This has just been a blessing to me to meet you and to just share kindred spirits. So thank you for that. you can connect with me on all social media at the Shea Sparks on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Shea Sparks. And that's SHASPARKS. My website is shaysparks.com. And there is, if you've listened to this and you're like, gosh, that she has shared some wisdom and I really like the journaling part, or I'm curious about what fearless living coaching must be like, I do have a link that they could book an appointment with me if they're interested, if your audience is interested. Take whatever it is that they're going through and help you grow through it rather than just go through it, and take fearless action towards what it is that they're wanting to move through. My podcast is called The Shea Sparks Show. You can find it on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, and my website is theshaysparkshow.com. And if you are a small business owner and or podcaster, I do have a PDF booklet that you can download, and there's a lot of growth exercises in there as well.
Hmm.
It's really tapping into your inner and business voice. So we have three
Oh,
voices
okay.
I believe in: your inner voice, your business voice, and your legacy voice. A lot of times we're living our legacy right now. We don't even realize it. But this really helps with the inner voice and our business voice. So you can go to theshaysparkshow.com and you can download it there after you enter your email.
Okay. I'm going to check that out. I've never heard of those
Yeah.
three voices. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much, Shay. Shay Sparks, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I wish you all the best in everything you do going forward in your new relationship. I'm excited for you with that. And in your work and your counseling, I know you're going to help a lot of people. And so thank you for being here and be blessed.
Thank you.